In the early years of the Cold War, a chilling program took shape behind tightly sealed doors in clandestine labs across the United States. It was called Project MK-Ultra, a CIA initiative bent on perfecting the art of mind control with the ultimate goal of securing an advantage against foreign adversaries. Newly declassified records, over 1,200 pages, have shed fresh light on the extremes to which the agency was prepared to go in its quest to manipulate human behavior. From drug-induced hallucinations to electroshock therapy, the haunting details of MK-Ultra read like the darkest science fiction, yet they are sobering reality. The National Security Archive shared the following statement. Despite the agency's efforts to erase this hidden history, the documents that survived this purge and that have been gathered together here present a compelling and unsettling narrative of the CIA's decades-long effort to discover and test ways to erase, reprogram, and take total control of the human mind. Former U.S. Deputy Director of the CIA, Alan Dulles, ordered the agency to develop mind-controlling drugs to be used against the Soviets during the Cold War. His rationale was that the West was somewhat crippled in brain warfare and wanted to develop new ways of gaining an advantage over their adversaries. Adding to the tragedy of this story is the now declassified document about the details of the tragic fate of a CIA scientist named Dr. Frank Olson, whose mysterious death remains steeped in controversy decades later. The origins of MK-Ultra. Conceived in the early 1950s, MK-Ultra was launched under the direction of then CIA Deputy Director Alan Dulles. Alarmed by reports of Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean brainwashing techniques during the Korean War, the CIA sought to develop its own methods of harnessing, or breaking, the human mind. Over 144 sub-projects took shape between 1953 and 1964, aiming to discover interrogation procedures and substances capable of weakening individuals, eliciting confessions, and even reprogramming personalities. From the outset, secrecy was paramount. Many of those subjected to experiments never realized they were part of a classified government program. Some were prisoners, mental patients, and drug addicts, while others were ordinary citizens or even CIA and Army officials unknowingly dosed with hallucinogens, including LSD. The agency funneled funding through research institutions, sometimes using philanthropic organizations as cover, to create new hospital wings and covert safe houses.
Chilling experiments we have uncovered took place at this Gothic estate called Raven's Crag, halfway up Mount Royal in Montreal. It houses the Allen Memorial Institute of Psychiatry of McGill University. It was here that the CIA funded a series of experiments, severe experiments.
Within these walls, it conducted nightmarish experiments, often evoking memories of the unethical medical atrocities tried at Nuremberg after World War II. MK-Ultra extended further than only the US-based experiments. The notorious Montreal experiments, led by scientist Donald Cameron, who was paid and funded by the CIA, show horrific details that, to this day, still have trickling effects on the families affected who seek justice.
Well, there's a lot I could not remember after I got out of the Allen. When my family came, I was a zombie. I didn't even know who they were.
He never came out the same. He had a blank look in his eye. He didn't know who we were. He didn't know we were his daughters. He lost his job. We went into poverty after he came out.
The story starts with the early projects into mind control. A glimpse into the CIA's earliest ventures can be found in Document 6, a confidential memo dated 1952. This revealing piece of evidence chronicles Project Artichoke, the precursor to the notorious Operation MK-Ultra. It details a bold experiment in narco-hypnotic integrations. Here, agents turned their techniques on Russian operatives suspected of being doubled, subjecting them to prolonged drug-induced hypnosis, intended to wipe their memories clean. Under a potent combination of sodium pentothal, a fast-acting barbiturate, and desoxin, a powerful methamphetamine, the unsuspecting subjects were interrogated for over an hour, only to awaken with little recollection of the experiment. According to the memo, the trial was hailed as an outstanding success, hinting at just how far the CIA was willing to venture in its quest for control over the human mind. In other newly released documents, there are details of the clandestine methods used to seize control of the human mind. Although this is not new, it has now been declassified and detailed in the documents. Drug experiments, LSD, supplied in large quantities by pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly, played a central role. Researchers tested how high doses could induce hallucinations, paranoia, or manic states, all to gauge their effectiveness in interrogation and mind manipulation. At times, subjects unknowingly ingested LSD-laced drinks. The LSD experiments, as shown by the Montreal experiments, often were combined with putting subjects into an artificial coma, often for as long as up to 86 days. Electroshock and sleep therapy. Scientists explored whether electroshock treatments and extended periods of induced sleep could erase existing memories, clean the slate, and make subjects more open to suggestion or psychic driving. Psychic driving is the concept in which participants, often drugged, were bombarded with recorded messages or sounds for days or even weeks in an attempt to break down their personalities and reprogram their minds to potentially take control over their minds. Originally developed to treat schizophrenia, it was one of the main techniques derived from the Montreal experiments. Safe houses, CIA operatives set up inconspicuous locations where unwitting civilians were dosed and monitored. These sites were run by CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb and narcotics agent George White, who later admitted many of these experiments were of highly unorthodox nature. George White was hired by Gottlieb to run and manage these black sites. Test subjects. Among the unwitting participants was notorious gangster James Whitey Bulger. While incarcerated in 1957 at the Atlanta Penitentiary, he found himself in the grip of terrifying hallucinations, racked by paranoia, and convinced that his surroundings were morphing into ghoulish objects. Bulger's testimony years later provided a window into the project's traumatizing impact. On one account, he stated, "We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls. Guys turning to skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change into the head of a dog. I felt like I was going insane." These experiments and accounts of the people that weren't destroyed in an attempt to erase its history show the pure horror of MK Ultra. By the end of the 1950s, CIA officials concluded that some goals like developing a foolproof truth serum or an untraceable knockout pill were out of reach. Yet the quest continued until at least 1963, when the agency finally ended MK Ultra, citing a lack of productive results and growing ethical concerns. Although many MK Ultra documents were destroyed in 1973 in an attempt by the agency to erase it from history, a trove of surviving papers, now declassified, reveals the extent of this haunting chapter in American intelligence history. Amid the disturbing tapestry of MK Ultra revelations, one story, as part of Document 9, stands out for its tragic and enduring mystery: the death of Dr. Frank Olson in late November 1953. Olson, a brilliant biological warfare scientist, was part of the Army's Chemical Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and privy to some of the agency's most sensitive experiments. As newly released first-hand accounts show, Olson's final days were marked by paranoia and confusion, set in motion after he was secretly dosed with LSD during a meeting at a CIA hideaway called Deep Creek Lake. Once outgoing and sociable, and generally known for his "the life of the party" style of living, Olson's behavior radically shifted in a matter of days. His colleague and boss, Vincent Ruett, recalled in a written statement how Olson grew agitated and fearful, believing that unseen figures were out to arrest him. During a trip to New York to seek psychiatric help, Olson became so distressed that he fled into the streets at night to discard his wallet and identification. He explained to Ruett that he did so because he had been told to, though he later admitted he could not recall who ordered it, if indeed anyone did. While arrangements were underway to admit Olson to a mental health facility, tragedy struck. In the early hours of November 28, 1953, Olson reportedly plummeted from the 10th floor window of Manhattan's Statler Hotel. His cocktail, which he consumed at least a week before, was presumably spiked with LSD by Gottlieb and his accomplices. Officials quickly declared the death a suicide, citing Olson's fragile mental state as proof of his intentions. However, his family was barred from seeing his body, told instead that he had suffered disfiguring facial injuries. Years later, when Olson's son had his father's body exhumed, the pathologist found no extensive facial trauma. Rather, there was suspicious head trauma consistent with foul play. For many, this raised the haunting possibility that Olson's death was not a suicide, but an orchestrated murder, perhaps to silence a scientist who knew too much. Dr. Olson's case highlights the lengths to which the CIA was willing to push moral and scientific boundaries and raises the specter of deeper secrets that remain hidden. While the New York District Attorney's Office reopened Olson's case in 1996, ultimately altering the cause of death from suicide to unknown, no conclusive evidence has fully explained the events of that fateful night. The Olson family and some independent researchers remain convinced that his anxieties stemmed from remorse or alarm over the nature of his work, and that he was deliberately incapacitated to ensure his silence. Today, the CIA maintains that MK-Ultra was discontinued decades ago due to ethical and practical concerns. Moreover, new oversight measures, such as the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, were established in the mid-1970s precisely to prevent future abuses by intelligence agencies. Nevertheless, the disturbing legacy of MK-Ultra endures, emblematic of a time when fear of communist mind control led the U.S. government to flout moral boundaries in its own covert programs. Although never admitted or will never be confirmed, we can rest assured that mind control experiments are surely not discontinued. Project MK-Ultra's chilling experiments offer a stark reminder of how secrecy and fear can corrode ethical lines in the name of national security. Through hallucinogens, electroshock, sleep therapy, and manipulative mind control tactics, the CIA tested the limits of human endurance, often leaving unwitting subjects scarred, both physically and psychologically. The newly revealed documents and the tragic story of Dr. Frank Olson underscores how deeply these secret operations impacted real human lives. For many, the MK-Ultra saga remains an unsettling chapter in American history, proof that even democratic societies can be tempted down dark paths when the ends appear to justify the means, supposedly. While we may never know every detail of what transpired during Olson's final hours and the full details of MK-Ultra experiments, the fragmented records that survive serve as a solemn testament, reminding us that no shield of secrecy should eclipse accountability and respect for human dignity.